Thank you for listening to this Podcast One production. Available on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One.
Welcome into the best in paranormal talk radio. It's a Sunday right here on Beyond the Darkness. I'm Tim Dennis in for Dave Schrader, who is off filming for his new TV show, which I've joked around about before. It's much like Avengers Endgame. I could probably give you spoilers as to what happens in Dave's new TV show, but I'd have to kill you. Orders of Walt Disney. I'm kidding. I know what... I don't really know what's going on with Dave and what's going on the set, but I do have a few little things that I know about the show, and it does sound really exciting, and it is coming to a cable network near you. Dave will give you details as you know, things start to wrap up with the show, and he'll let you know where you'll be able to see it. I think it's this fall is when it's coming out. But it's pretty exciting. Before we get to our guest, and it is a very exciting show today on Beyond the Darkness, let me tell you about this. We continue to add events, Dave and I do, throughout not only this year, but next year. If you want to see Dave and I around the country, you just go to darknessevents.com. Not only is there there's so many things going on. I'm losing myself here. Not only do you get Michigan Paracon this August, where Dave and I will both be appearing in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Not only do you get the Jericho cruise in January, which, by the way, that thing is almost 3/4 sold out. You got to get to it. It's AEW, All Elite Wrestling. You've got rock and roll. And Dave and I are your paranormal experts there as we sail to the Bahamas and, yes, go through the Bermuda Triangle. You heard me right. Not only have you got that, but this week alone, 2 new events were announced where Dave and I are going to be appearing. You've got the Chicago Ghost Conference, and I believe that's October 18th through the 20th of this year. And then Phenomenology 2020 in March of next year, in the Gettysburg area. Now, notice I said Gettysburg area. And the Gettysburg Conference is offering a special this weekend only. Actually, it's until May 1st. So it's this weekend into May 1st, where if you buy a ticket, you can be put into a drawing to win a second ticket for free. Of course, you don't win a second ticket to pay. You win a second ticket for free, right? That's Tim Dennis logic there for you. So, Phenomenology 2020, March, I believe it's 19th to the 21st. Check it at darknessevents.com. Click on the banner and take advantage of that special. So there you go. You've got 3 events now where Dave and I are going to be appearing. Check them all out at darknessevents.com. It's going to be a busy year, 2019 going into 2020. You've got Chicago Ghost, or you've got, I'm sorry, that's 4 events. Jeez. Wow. It's going to be busy. Is that 4 events or 3 events? One too many hits to the head, kids. Check it out anyways, darknessevents.com. I'm excited. Lots of good stuff coming up here in the next year. I can't wait. You got Phenomenology, you've got the cruise, you've got Chicago Ghost Con, you got Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. I can't wait because Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan is right before my birthday. We're going to have lots of fun out there. That's the one that kicks it all off right there at Michigan Paracon. I look forward to that one every year. That is going to be a fun time. So make sure you join Dave and I out there first. Again, darknessevents.com. I can't wait. I can't wait to see you all out there as well. Let's get to today's program. This is an interesting one, folks. As Dave said, hey, I got a hot one for you, Tim. I can't wait for you to talk to this guy. Let's jump into it right away. This guy is Charles Michael Beaver. He's worked in the motion picture industry between short IT-related contracts off and on for about a decade. He's also been a stuntman in Houston, Texas, some time ago. He's got a martial arts background. Okay, he did a sidekick off a top of a 2-story racquetball court as a death scene in West Texas. It was the most dangerous stunt he ever did. We'll talk about that. He always thought his life would be an awesome movie. We're going to find out what that movie entails. I've checked into a little bit of this. He's got some pretty hair-raising experiences as well. And he claims that many of these experiences will stretch your mind close to the breaking point. Such would be the same effect on anyone else where they put through those same bizarre experiences. He claims his wife and he have been plagued by paranormal experiences all throughout their lives, both before and after they met. He's also been working on a book for over 30 years about ETs, consciousness, and the paranormal. And he's put many moving pieces together, and he thinks that it's excellent work. 2 men have edited it thus far. One is the smartest person that he's ever met and is possibly the world's best expert on one once suppressed Royal Raymond Rife. Let's bring him in right now and let's put it all together. Mike Beaver, welcome to Beyond the Darkness. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Well, thanks for being on. Let's start out first of all. I'm going to jump into the motion picture industry first. It seems to me there's an adrenaline side to you. Evidently, there's the adrenaline rush. That fascinates me. Let's start with that. I myself have a bit of a adrenaline rush. I do the whole pro wrestling thing, and I ring announce and all of that. So I get that. I get the adrenaline rush. But I want to find out a little bit about how you started off your introduction, and in that there was the martial arts sidekick off the top of a 2-story racquetball court. Tell me how that happened, and what was all involved with that stunt.
Well, that was in a movie called Beneath the Hidden Jungle. There was a producer out of Houston that was shooting movies in 3D with two cameras,
mm-hmm.
and I think it was like 3D video rather than 35 millimeter. But he made 3 or 4 movies, and in one of those, I think it was called Beneath the Hidden Jungle. The death scene at the end of the movie, I don't know anything about the movie because I've never seen it.
Okay.
But I just know a lot of us, there was like 5 or 6 people that got to play the ninja, and I've done that in a number of pictures. But in this one, the good guy and the bad guy, they're fighting on a roof of a 2-story racquetball court, and it's just a gravel surface, and there was a 2.5 foot or maybe 3.5 foot wall on the edge of the building, and that comes up above the ceiling, the roof, and I had to run, jump, do a sidekick, go past that wall, that short wall, and fall to in this case, it would have been safe if I'd had an airbag. But in this case, it was a sponge bag, which was 1/4 of the size of the smallest airbag. And in that case, it was very dangerous. And I had him pull it closer to the building, and it still was not close enough. And so being a martial artist, I know how to do a sidekick, but high falls, contrary to popular belief, are actually more dangerous the lower they are. The higher they are, the safer they are.
Really?
So a 2-story racquetball court is about as dangerous as it gets. If it were like a 50-story building, it would be very safe.
Now, why is that? Why is it the higher the fall, the less dangerous it is?
Because the only thing you need to worry about is how you hit the mat. And if you hit the mat correctly, you live. If you hit the mat incorrectly, you're going to hurt yourself. So in this case, as I was about to say, how do I put this? I know how to do a sidekick, but a flying sidekick, but doing a flying sidekick off a building and then turning to land on your back, which you have to do, there's not enough time off a 2-story racquetball court. It can't be done. So what happened was I ended up landing on the bag standing up, and it compressed my body down, and my eye hit my knee. It broke all the blood vessels around my eye. My eye filled up with blood, and it messed up my ribs, which I can still feel occasionally here and there. Every once in a while I can feel them. That injury never fully healed, but it doesn't get any more dangerous. So anyway, here's the deal: is that since it was video, they played it back afterwards, and I saw myself and the video, and the guy said, "Oh, we want you to do it again." So I had to do it 3 times.
What?
So
really,
I did it a second time. Had the same effect. Landed on my feet, and it's really not good to do that to your body. But after watching it the second time, my mind finally snapped to what I was doing wrong. And what I was doing wrong was I was doing a sidekick like you normally do a sidekick. There's not enough time to shift from the sidekick position to landing on your back off a 2-story racquetball court. It's not possible. So what I did was I noticed that watching the video that I was the size of an ant in the video, and nobody would know what position my body's in when I go off the top of that. It was just too small. So what I did was I went up to do the sidekick, and I'm flying in the air, and instead of doing it like you normally did it, I laid my back down as I began the kick. Instead of holding your body upright, I just did it like I was already laying on a bed as I did the kick. My feet were out, and my back was laid down as if I was laying on a bed. And then I landed properly on the mat. But there was still a mistake. You see, the mat was still too far out. And so my lower body landed on the mat, and my upper body didn't land on the mat. It was off the mat. So it was a miracle I didn't break my back, because I didn't land on my back. I more like landed on my butt. And it was truly a miracle that I didn't break my back that day. But so I have you're talking to an actual miracle. I had a motorcycle accident one time where 100% I should have died, but I didn't. And I've had a cop try to kill me. I've had a tow truck driver try to kill me. I've almost killed myself by accident. I had an organization try to kill me, which I still have yet to identify. I have a person that I won't identify try to kill me, and my attaching spirit that sits on my head that we may get into tried to kill me.
Oh, we will.
So I had 6 different entities try to kill me.
We'll get into all those, but first I want to, Mike, okay. So as a guy loosely in the wrestling business here, you took 2 back bumps, 2 stories onto a racquetball court.
No, the racquetball court was what I was jumping off of.
Well,
I was landing on a sponge bag.
Well, yeah, but you actually hit the court, not the. No,
I hit the bag every time, but
right. But you said part of you hit the sponge bag, but part of you hit ground,
no. Okay,
right?
so here's what happened. I landed standing up twice. I landed with the bottom half. If you take your stomach and then downward, that part of me hit the bag. Above from the middle of my stomach up was hanging off the bag. It didn't hit anything. It was
okay.
air.
Okay.
It was like stretched out off the bag.
Here, I thought I thought it compressed and you actually bumped off the actual ground.
No.
Okay.
No. What happened was I hit the mat, but by all rights I should have broken my back because
you would have snapped.
Wasn't
right?
on the mat. My back was on thin air.
Right, and there should have been a whiplash effect.
Well, yeah, it should have killed me, or it should have broken my back. It shouldn't have killed me, but it should have broken my back.
Right, from the whiplash effect. Jeez. Wow.
But when I met one of my three best friends, we were down in Freeport, and I met him going down there. I was driving down there to normal speed limit. He rode up behind me on his race bike. I mean, an actual race bike that he uses on the track for racing, fitted for racing, and he like gunned it like he wanted to race. So he took off, and I followed him, and we raced all the way down to Freeport, and we 8 people. We consumed a keg between 8 people, which is a lot of beer.
That is, yeah.
And we raced after that, and I didn't have I didn't have any helmet on, and I ended up in a coma for 3 days. Should have died, and the cop woke me up at the scene of the accident, and all I could see was clouds and a big dark object coming at me, and I didn't know what it was, but I kept pushing it away. It was a cop, and they were writing me. They measured from where I went off the Levee Road, which is like an Indy style turn, and I went off the edge of that thing and on the turn itself, and they measured from where I went off to where the bike hit on its tank upside down, and they figured I was going 75 to 80 miles an hour, so they wrote me a ticket for 75 while I'm dying.
Jeez. So whoa. Now, I'm going to ask you kind of an odd question. As you're kind of starting to slip into this coma and you're seeing this dark thing coming at you, and obviously you're seeing clouds.
No, here's what happened. Okay. We're racing, right? He's ahead of me.
Okay.
He gets down into this curve, and we're tracking on this curve like we're Formula One guys.
Okay.
We're just like hauling butt, and we're just doing perfect around this. And my tires are up above my head. My head's way down. My body's way down. Mm-hmm. My tires are way up in the air because this is a Indy style turn, right?
Okay.
And we get all the way around. We get 2/3 of the way around this curve, and the radius of the turn decreases inward radically at the end. Mm-hmm. We didn't know that because neither one of us had ever ridden on this road.
Okay.
So when we got to that, when the radius decreased, it flipped. He kept cranking his bike over, and the case guard started scraping on the ground, and the back tire came off the ground, and it just started spinning in the middle of the road. And he had full leathers on, so he didn't get too much road rash. Me, it flipped my bike upright to where it was perpendicular to the road. I mean, perfectly perpendicular, right? Mm-hmm. And it started slowly drifting up the road until I was literally driving on the edge. And the last thing I remember was I was driving literally on the edge of the top of this road, and that's where my memory stops. It's like somebody clipped the end of a 35 millimeter film, and it's no more after that edge. I didn't see myself fly off of it or anything beyond that edge. And then, my impact, I didn't have a helmet on, right? I'm going 75, and I fly off this road that's 30, 40 foot off the ground. I hit the ground on the top of my head with no helmet. It compressed my spine. My chiropractor said it was the worst spinal compression he'd ever seen in his life. And the whole top of my head turned like a baby's head. It was very soft. And I was in a coma for 3 days. So that's how it worked out.
Jeez. So this is going to seem like a ridiculous question, I know, but at what point are you realizing that he's writing you a ticket? I mean, if things are just kind of stop and start with your memory.
I know he wrote me a ticket because I got the ticket.
Oh, you got it after everything had happened.
I got it. However they sent it to me, I got it. I never paid it either.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't have.
There was a warrant out for me for a long time there. But I never showed up down there. I never did anything illegal down in that area. I mean, mm-hmm. we did road racing in Houston where people had to get life flighted out because they went off the side, Mm-hmm. We had a whole group of people, a big group of people that had crotch rockets, and we tore things up at very high speed, road racing, all illegal for a long time there.
Man.
We did all kinds of crazy things. Like we did wheelies down the middle of Westheimer, the longest street in the city of Houston. And we played Frisbee. We threw Frisbee back and forth across this 6-lane road that had cars packed bumper to bumper on all 3 lanes, all 6 lanes. And we throw Frisbee through the cars.
Jeez.
As they're moving.
That's talent. I'll give you that. That definitely is talent. Well, you know what? Mike does have his share of stories, and every car does come with its share of stories. You might have that ding in your bumper where you nervously picked up a first date, the luxury package you got after a big promotion, or the mileage you saved by riding your bike all summer. And while you can't put a price tag on your stories now, with TrueCar, you can at least find out what your car's worth is when it's time to sell or trade it in. Just go to TrueCar and simply enter your license plate number and watch how your car's details pop up. Then answer a few questions. Navigation and moonroof. Watch as they bump up your value. High mileage. You already knew it was going to cost you, but now you know how much it dings your wallet so you can plan ahead. Once you finish, you'll get a true cash offer sent in minutes, which you can take to a local certified dealer to cash out or trade in. So when you're ready to experience a better way to sell or trade in your car, check out TrueCar today. True cash offer not available in all areas. Welcome back to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness on a Sunday. I'm Tim Dennison for Dave Schrader. Man, Charles Mike Beaver, we call him Mike, is with us on a Sunday, and we're having a very interesting conversation. Mike, okay, so
we haven't gotten into the interesting stuff.
We haven't, but this is the boring stuff.
I'm serious.
Okay, this is the boring stuff. My life is
far more interesting than anything I've told you. So
well, all right, but we're dealing now with the near death, the near. I don't even want to say near death. The near. Let's put it this way: the close encounters of the deadly kind. We'll put it that way. Yeah. Okay, so we've. You've had the crash with the car. You've had the 2-story fall.
No, the crash was with the motorcycle.
Oh, I'm sorry, the crash with the motorcycle. What? I don't want to say what else so flippantly, but have there been other things in your past that might have raised the hair on the back of our necks here? Well,
the paranormal stuff I've gone through is far scarier than anything I've told you so far. I mean, far scarier. And this stuff pales in comparison.
And the paranormal stuff kind of pales in comparison. We should mention here, and actually I want to get in, before we get into the paranormal stuff, I do want to preface this by saying that one of the things I forgot to mention to people is that you're also a hypnotherapist. And last week we did deal a little bit with the subject of hypnotherapy. I do want to ask you this question, Mike. When it comes to hypnotherapy, I want to know where you stand with hypnotherapy and the paranormal. Do you believe that hypnotherapy, and we talked about past lives a little bit last week, but I want to ask you this question because I didn't get around to asking this with the hypnotherapist. Do you believe that hypnotherapy, pardon me, mouth got a little disengaged there. Do you believe hypnotherapy can not only unlock past lives and past life regressions, but do you believe it can unlock other things, such as not just communication with ETs, but unlock, let's just put it this way. Do you believe it can instigate communication with the other side?
Well, I've had clients who, I had one client who, I've actually had multiple clients who spoke with deceased people. In fact, I spoke with my own father after he was deceased through my wife, and I had one lady who, the lady I told you about, or that you know about, that I helped with the who was used as a breeder for the Greys. One of the interesting things about her that I learned before we got into the Grey stuff was, one of the very first things we noticed was her husband was in the room with us when I was doing the hypnotherapy, and he was hovering near the ceiling, and she noticed him there.
Let's rewind a little bit for everybody, Mike. Let's explain the story from the beginning with her and what her story was.
Well, she came to me for back pain and obesity.
Okay.
And she was abused by her parents quite a bit, And she did what I consider the impossible in the first session. My teacher taught me that your subconscious will not allow you to release too much in a given session, or else you'll go nuts. You'll just become unbalanced. He taught me that there was a limit. Well, she broke that limit by far. Mm-hmm. She released over 3,800 events in one session, and I thought that was very impossible. And so in the second session, the very first thing I did in the second session was ask her subconscious, did you really do that? Did you really release all 3,800 events in one session? It said yes. And I said, okay. I was very skeptical until it said yes. And because sometimes people, like, they'll have an attaching spirit, and it'll just play games with you the whole time and act like it's going to go into the light and this and that. And it's all just playing games. It's not really cooperating. It's just playing games. So you have to be a little skeptical when you have sessions with people. And, the attaching spirits are, the other side. There really is no other side, because this side and the other side is the same side. It's hard to...
How so? How so?
Well, you hear about people who are on craft who see their dead relatives, and the assumption is that those dead relatives, they're just a screen memory. But if you look at it a little differently, if you think about aliens at a certain level having access to both sides, then, if at a certain level of reality, beings, there's no split between alive and dead. It's all one. And so if you get to a certain level, the beings are going to be on both sides. And my close encounters, I've only had 2 close encounters that were really close up in your face encounters.
Okay.
If you talk to most abductees, I'm not an abductee, I'm a contactee.
Okay.
And I talked to Joe Montaldo the other day, and he's an abductee, and he has a lot of knowledge, but he did not believe I could be a contactee without being an abductee. He just would not believe it. And he's not the only one. I've come across other abductees. They either think I'm an agent of the government, or I'm lying, or I'm just, how do I put this? I'm just being deceived that there's no missing time anymore because they got so good at it that they can bring you back at the exact moment they took you. So there's no way for you to know you're ever taken. So it's one of those 3, according to these people. And I'm like, no, there are beings. See, he thinks that that the Greys control all access to the Earth. That nobody can come to this planet except unless the Greys allow it. And I'm like, no, that's not correct. And so the Greys may be the policemen of the universe, but if you go down in a dangerous neighborhood, the cop may have the gun, but a lot of other people have guns too.
Okay.
It's not just the cops.
Right.
So, just because somebody's the policeman of the universe does not mean they control everything. So, I mean, the fact that they're a policeman of the universe may be absolutely true, but it doesn't mean they control everything. So I'll give you an example. The lady we're talking about, before she was first abducted at the age of 9, they shot her with growth hormone. They didn't do anything about breeding directly on her first abduction. All they did was shoot her up with a growth hormone so that she would become sexually mature at the age of 9. And so far earlier than she would normally become sexually mature, so that they could start using her as a breeder at a very early age. So, but before that happened, she, I guess at the age of 8 or at the age of 9, before they came, she had what she called astral demons manifest in the room she was in. They just appeared out of nowhere, and they tried to attack her. And when they went to attack her, she said there was an invisible shield between her and them, and they couldn't get through it. And so what I suspect is that was not a screen memory. That really happened, and the Greys put that shield up because they said, no, you're not going to touch this woman. She's ours. So, the Greys are pretty powerful. If they can stop disincarnates from or beings from the astral plane from doing things on this plane, that's a lot of power. So anyway.
Many questions right now, Mike. Okay, so let me ask you this. I'm going to start with this question. If the Greys are the police... Now, when we get an image of policemen, we think to serve and protect. And you brought out a very good example of protection. Okay, protecting this woman from demons. Okay, that would assume a good function of police.
Not really.
Okay, good. But you're getting...
It's like the battle between Hitler and Stalin.
Okay,
Who was the
right,
good guy?
right.
Stalin was the good guy, right?
You're getting...
He killed over 100 million people.
Right, but let me get to my point. Right. You're getting to my point. But then you also said they took a 9-year-old girl and filled her full of growth hormones so she could produce early, so she could give birth early. Not exactly a commendable thing on their part.
No, she never gave birth. They don't allow you to give birth.
Well, so she could start to, so she could
breed.
So she could start to breed early.
Okay, so before you ask the question, let me tell you the specifics about her.
Okay.
She was abducted 72 times when I knew her.
Mm-hmm.
There was 24 implantations,
mm-hmm.
24 checkups, 24 removals, 72 encounters, 48 abductions. The 24 checkups there was no abduction involved. They just came and checked. And then 55 offspring. And I thought that number of offspring was high, but then I read a book that mentioned several women that had that many or more. So she's not as unique as you might think.
That's not unique?
Actually, it's not. But she is unique in the sense that she was able to get probably more information about the Greys than anybody who's ever been abducted. So that's in the book.
Okay. So this to me says that, okay, there's not a huge moral compass with the Greys. I mean, to call them...
No. Okay, so the Greys are more like humans than they're not like humans. The humans... let me tell you about the abductee one more time, one more piece of information.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, I said to her, do you want to be anonymous or named in my book? Mm-hmm. She said anonymous. I said, why? Because I do not want my fellow humans dissecting me.
I don't blame her.
She said, I'm more afraid of humans than I am of Greys. And she was freaking out on board. She wasn't calm. She was totally freaking out the whole time she's on board, but yet she's more afraid of humans than Greys. So it took me a long time for me to understand why she was like that. I understand that now. I mean, I do. I went through some things that humans put me through that the Greys wouldn't put me through. And they did it on purpose, and they were not the Greys. I don't know who they were, but one day I'll turn their Friday into a Monday, I promise.
Can you speculate for me, and this is just a what if, can you speculate for me what could be the worst thing that humans would put you through that Greys wouldn't, if it came down to a woman who said, I've sired 55 human alien hybrid babies?
Okay, so if you've ever gotten into the breakaway civilization stuff,
mm-hmm.
you'll find that there isn't much humans won't do. I mean, we make the Greys pale. What they do with the breeding, we make that stuff pale. That's nothing. The stuff we do to ourselves, it's beyond it's stuff that it's hard to believe that humans would do it to other humans, but we do. So I don't. That's really the end story. I was mind fucked, to excuse my French, in a facility for 5 days, and it wasn't physical. It was all mental, but it was all humans. It wasn't Greys, And I don't know if they were shape-shifting aliens, but I sort of doubt it. I think it was they talk about the breakaway civilization. I think that's who it was, to be honest. And
for our listeners who don't know, what is this breakaway civilization?
Well, did you ever watch what's the Minnesota governor that was a wrestler?
Jesse Ventura.
Okay. Did you ever watch this show, Conspiracy Theory?
I did, yes. Some of our listeners may not have, but I did, yeah.
Okay, so one of the episodes, they're at the beginning, when it first comes on, he's riding in a car, and they're in Ozark Mountains,
mm-hmm.
and they're going down the street, and on the right side of the street, you have a small rocky surface that goes up about maybe a little higher than a car, and flatten, and then it doesn't go up much higher than that.
Right.
And it kind of goes over where you can't see the top of it. And it's false rock. It's far too uniform. It's obviously plastic and, very poorly done. And then at some point they turn into a little driveway that's inclined, and they come to a stop, and there's an arm there, and the arm goes up, and they drive in, and it's one of the underground cities. There's supposed to be a dozen underground cities in the Ozarks, and they went driving around in this thing. And it's not the only video of anybody driving around. There's another video where a guy's driving an 18-wheeler through this same compound, underground city. It's not a compound; it's in a whole city, and that's where all your deficit. These trillions of dollars. That's that's part of where it went to in those 12 cities, underground cities. But anyway, when they're driving around in there, you see all these little bitty smart cars that are brand new, spotless, uniform, exactly the same, and probably nobody's ever gotten in one. And then at some point they look over to the right. And they pan the camera, and there's this freeway in the middle of this underground city. There's a freeway, and there's two 18-wheelers driving at 55 miles an hour right next to each other. There's no runoff on either side of them. There's the same width as a normal freeway, but maybe a little bit thinner on the lane. Just barely enough space for an 18-wheeler to fit. And these two guys are driving these two 18-wheelers at highway speed. And I thought it was an optical illusion almost. They were side by side driving in the same direction. And, of course, we have both directions here. Well, they didn't have both directions. There was one direction, 2 lanes, and they're right beside each other, and they were up to speed. And it's like inside a city. And you're like, huh? Doesn't make any sense. But that's, you can go watch the video. It's still out on YouTube.
So you get inside the city, and what exactly is it that they do to you? What is it that is it interrogation? Is it
Well, I don't know anything about that city. I mean, the only thing I've seen in that city is what he showed on his show, and then another time there was an 18-wheeler that drove around further back into this thing and actually turned around. And when he turned around, I think he had to literally back up because there was no turnaround. And I don't know how he kept from getting stuck, but he drove all around in this thing. And it doesn't really show you much, but just a bunch of rock, or fake rock, I should say. And you really can't tell anything that's in there. It's like a huge parking garage with the freeway, and that's about it. You can't even see any building structures or anything. It's just what I've told you is all they show. There wasn't anything more than that. As far as what they do in there, I have no clue. That's beyond my knowledge.
Because, and again, I'll take the devil's advocate skeptic side of things. And we'll get into what was done with you here in a little bit. Yeah. But I would think that, again, being a little bit of a trusting soul, and you may laugh at me for saying that, that I would take my chances with the humans over the grays.
Well, if you've listened to the Breakaway Civilization guys talk, I've listened to. If you go to my abductee, contactee, and experiencer page on my website, you'll find more links to recordings like the one you're doing now than anywhere on the planet. There's no other site that compares to mine. So my site as a whole is one of the largest sites ever made, bar none. I'm talking about non-commercial, not where there's nothing sold. It's just a site that's free and fully available. There are very few sites that are bigger that they're non-commercial. There's some specialty sites that have this and that, but as far as stretched out over many different topics, there's almost nothing that compares to my website.
Right, and I say this only from a devil's advocate standpoint, knowing that, and this is someone walking into this for the first time, knowing that here come these grays, and the only thing they've done is implant things in me, dissected me, and had nothing but ill will towards me, and not really explaining what they're doing other than just using me as a piece of meat and experimenting on me.
Well, hold on, stop. They don't do any dissecting. The humans were the ones I was accusing of dissecting. Grays don't dissect. They need you in good condition as long as they can keep you that way, because the more they can use your body to breed or your sperm to help breed, they want to keep you in perfect condition. They do not want anybody harming you, not even other humans.
Well, what are the implants then that people are complaining about that they find these little metal implants?
Yeah, well, I was never a member, but I used to show up at the HUFON meetings in Houston. You're familiar with MUFON. Are you familiar with HUFON?
No, I know what MUFON is, but not HUFON.
Do you know who Daryl Sims is?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's not a member of MUFON. He's a member of HUFON. Okay, he's the lead investigator of HUFON, Houston UFO Network.
Oh,
it's a different organization altogether.
Okay.
And so they have big meetings, just like the meetings in L.A. or the meetings in New York. In the big cities, the biggest cities, they have big meetings. Only in L.A., New York, and I don't know about New York. I can't really comment on New York. I know there's some meetings in L.A. that are pretty big, but another organization took over their meetings in L.A. But HUFON has its own meetings, and they're big. And he's the lead investigator, and he carries around a box full of alien implants. I never counted them when he showed them to me, but I was in this room with him and a bunch of other people after a HUFON meeting. There was one of Bob Bigelow's people approached me in that meeting, and I told him I have an abductee client that's had 72 encounters with the Greys, and he looked at me like I was off my rocker. But with his boss having alien craft crash parts in his building, you'd think he would believe in these things.
Mm-hmm.
You know that he's got that, right?
I did not know. No,
Yeah, okay.
No.
So that was part of the disclosure recently. If you go to I'll show you a page on my website if you want to see it. I have links to all the disclosure stuff. The best disclosure stuff that happened recently with the stuff that you may have seen got pulled back. That was actually removed from the internet. It's not up there anymore. The best stuff has been withdrawn. And, people will say, well, disclosure already happened. I'm like, no, it didn't. The best disclosure that's happened so far got pulled. You can't get it anymore. So I left the dead link on my site just so I could prove it to people.
Okay. Well, let's do this, Mike. Let's take our break right now. And when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about your experiences with these ETs and these, and I take it, well, let's just preface it with that. Let's talk about your experiences with the ETs, and then we'll go into the paranormal in general and your experiences with the paranormal. There's a lot more to cover here, folks. Our guest is Mike Beaver. We'll be talking more about his crazy, strange, incredible life with the supernatural. It's coming up next here on Beyond the Darkness. In the meantime, while Dave has been gone, we've been doing a little bit of the best of Theater of the Mind and pulling some of our favorite Theater of the Minds from the archives. So sit back, enjoy, and relax, and check out another episode of the best of Theater of the Mind.
This week's Theater of the Mind is a real-life experience from Joseph Buddich. Life imitating art. Back in 1979, when I was just 10 years old, CBS ran a miniseries called Salem's Lot. My mother and father actually left me and my younger brothers home alone with a couple of our friends, while they went up the street to visit my grandmother, who was just a block away. It was a different time then, and it was a safe neighborhood, so I can't fault them for trusting us alone. Of course, with them gone, we all opted to watch Salem's Lot. We made it through the show without incident and went upstairs to play. After a little while, my younger brother started screaming, and I ran into his room. I asked him what was the matter, and he said he heard somebody scratching on his window. His friend Steve agreed with him. I called them both chickens, and I told them to settle down or I was going to get in trouble for letting them watch that movie. I knew they were just thinking of that vampire kid scratching on his friend's window to let them in, and I wasn't going to take a beating because they were wusses. I might have thought my younger brother, James, was trying to scare them by scratching on the window, but I knew that there was no way he could climb up onto that particular second-floor window, so I just chalked it up to them being scaredy cats, and I still do. The night got later, and I knew my parents were up the street playing cards. They always came home late when they did that, so I told everyone they could sleep downstairs in the living room, so no one would get up in the middle of the night screaming that a vampire had tried to bite them. I'm not sure what time it was, but I knew it was before 2 a.m., but sometime after midnight that there started a light knocking on the front door. The living room was adjacent to the hallway, and that led to the front door, and you could look out one of its windows onto the porch. We had a window by the front door, but it was stained glass, and you couldn't see out if you wanted to. The door itself had a frosted-style window that only let you see shadows, but not who was on the other side. I had awakened pretty quickly. I mean, I might not be chicken, but at 10 years old, if you're alone in a house with no parents and had just watched a creepy-as-hell vampire flick, your heart tends to pound pretty hard at the slightest noise. The knocking was fairly hard, but not rapid. Just a knock. 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 Which would start again after about a few minutes. I got up pretty slowly and went to the door. "Who is it?" I asked. The knocking stopped. And again I asked, "Who's there?" Now at this point, I was in a quandary. I couldn't look scared or I'd never hear the end of it. And I couldn't open the door because I didn't know who it was. That was when a girl's voice said,
"Let us in. We are cold."
Now, the girl sounded like she was about my age or maybe a little older. I could just make out the outline of the top of her head through the door window. She was just slightly taller than me. That was when Brock, my other stayover friend, called from the living room. "Hey, Bud, there's 2 girls at the door." I said, "What?" He replied that there were 2 girls out there in shorts and tank tops, and they didn't look cold. Then he said, "I think they're vampires." Now, we knew the lore. Vamps had to be invited in, and here we were with 2 girls we didn't know, and we knew every kid in our neighborhood. They were dressed like they were on a summer outing in the middle of a snowy November. Of course, he said vampires. Of course, I thought vampires too, but I wasn't going to admit it. "Shut up," I said to Brock, and then I turned to the door. "Who are you?" I asked.
"Cold,"
came the reply.
"We are so cold. We need in. Can we come in?"
Brock said they moved weird, and I should come see them. I left the door and went over to the curtains to look out. I asked Brock what he was talking about and how they moved. He said that they didn't shiver, and they weren't rubbing their arms. They just stood at the door, very still, like they were trying to look inside. I pulled aside the curtain to look out, when I was met with the face that almost pressed against the glass window. She was peering in. All I could see was that her eyes were jet black. Then I also noticed that I couldn't see her breath. She wasn't fogging up the glass, and she didn't have any wintry steam issuing from her mouth. She was like a glassy-eyed statue that moved. Her skin was light, but not pale, and I remember she had dark hair, She looked about 12 years old. All I know is I couldn't look away. It was like I was in a trance. I remember thinking over the years that vampires really could bedazzle you. You know, hit you with some kind of weird mind control, because I really felt like I was not in control of my body. If Steve hadn't started crying and knocked the curtains from my hand, I don't know what I would have done. I just might have opened that door and let them in. Once the window was covered and I recovered my wits, I yelled that I was calling the police. "You better get out of here, or I'm going to call the police!" I got everyone upstairs into my parents' room and closed the door. My parents arrived just a touch after 2 a.m. and wanted to know why we were all in their bed. My brothers blurted out that vampires had come to the door and tried to get us, and instantly, they knew we watched Salem's Lot. I was grounded for about a month, but it was a winter, so it wasn't that big a deal. We never forgot how we were visited by vampires on that cold November night. After hearing your show, I started thinking that this sounded a lot like black-eyed kids that you talk about. I have to admit, I never did see any fangs, but I sure as hell saw black eyes, like the demons on TV. I have to say that I now lean toward the probability that there are no vampires, but that there are those creepy black-eyed kids roaming amongst us.
If you like our show, you're going to love Offbeat with Ricky Anderson and Mir Harris on Podcast One. Join the head of A&R for the Kanye West-founded label, Good Music, and the music executive turned activist as they sit down for strange stories and offbeat conversations with some of the biggest names in music, comedy, entertainment, and more. Download new episodes of Offbeat with Ricky Anderson and Mir Harris every week on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One.
Beyond the darkness.
Welcome back to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness for a Sunday. Dave Schrader is off. He is filming. He's off filming his new television show, but he will be back next weekend. True Crime Tuesday is coming up on Tuesday, and yours truly will be hosting True Crime Tuesday. We'll hope you join us over there. If you don't know how to join us for True Crime Tuesday, it's real simple. Go to darknessradio.com, click on the banner with Scully wearing the fedora and his trench coat, and join us over there. It's just $5 a month. You can click on the banner and subscribe over there. You have over 2 years of shows waiting for you as well in the archives. Some great shows over there, some great topics on True Crime Tuesday. Plus, you get a lot of dumb crimes and stupid criminals. Lots of Florida Man over there as well. Lots of interesting and kind of funny stuff over there, as well as some serious topics over there on True Crime Tuesday if you click on the banner at darknessradio.com. So join me for True Crime Tuesday. Actually, I have an interesting topic coming up on Tuesday, as well as one of, I don't remember the name of the guest, but he is a cast member from The Godfather who will join us to talk about a true life crime that surrounds the Godfather film. It's coming up on Tuesday. Again, darknessradio.com. Click on the True Crime Tuesday banner and join us over there, won't you, for True Crime Tuesday. Back to today's program. We got a wild one, folks, here. We are talking to Mike Beaver, and we're talking about his unusual, strange life surrounding the paranormal. He's working on a book right now called Instruments of Control. And Mike, we were talking about your experiences with E.T. and the Greys. I want to get back to talking about your experiences with Greys and E.T. You started to talk a little bit about what was your first experience with Greys.
Well, to be honest, I've never had an experience with
Greys. Contactee. You call yourself a contactee, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you say you never really had an experience. Explain what that means.
No, I've never had an experience with the Greys.
Oh, with the Greys, but with E.T.
Okay, so the typical people are the Greys, reptilians. Mm-hmm. You have tall whites, and you have all these different races that people talk about that are as physical as you and I. And even the grays are not quite that physical, but I mean, they are and they're not. It's kind of hard to explain with them, but my personal experiences are with things that I would have a hard time describing. Okay, let me just go through a couple of them, and that way you can understand. Okay, so I was. Have you ever? You heard about the guy, the kid, the Oriental kid who killed all the people at Virginia Tech, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was working in an underground facility very close to Virginia Tech. It's called the Radford Army Ammunition Plant. So you walk into this hill, and you'd go back. You go down this long runway or walkway, and it's like going into Fort. What's the one in? The one that they used to show on Stargate in Colorado, the mountain, the big door.
The name escapes me.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So anyway, it's like walking into that because the door that you go into was like that one. And anyway, I was working there in that underground facility, and I was after I'd get off work, I'd go over to Virginia Tech, which is very close to there, and I'd go home, grab something to eat or not, or probably just change clothes. I used to eat. I don't remember if I eat before or after. It's not really important to the story, but I would change clothes and go out to the Virginia Tech, and they have this humongous fields between the buildings, and they're perfectly cut grass. It's perfect fields, right, for Frisbee. Very flat fields. And I was playing Frisbee with this guy. I would find all the kids there played Ultimate. So I don't know if you know anything about Ultimate, but it's like a cross between Frisbee, basketball, and football. Anyway, it's played on a field. They start on both ends like football. They serve off to each other. And it's sort of a cross between all three. Anyway, they would play Ultimate, and before they got their Ultimate game started, they would, they didn't mind playing a little side game of just toss the Frisbee. So my partner in Houston was 3-time Texas State female Frisbee champion, Carla Vargas, and her other partner is one of the world champions. And so I played with her and one of the world champions frequently. Or I played with her very frequently, and I played with Alan occasionally. Anyway, so this guy and I are playing, and he kept throwing the Frisbee at me really hard and kind of high, and I would immediately, as soon as he released it, I would turn around and I would run in the opposite direction as fast as I could, and I still couldn't get the Frisbee. He was throwing it slightly beyond my reach, and it would land on the grass, which is unusual for me. And it would land on the grass, and I'd reach down, I'd pick it up, and I would toss it back to him. And after so many throws, it landed. I went to pick it up, and I picked it up, and there was these 3 or 4 women in bikinis laying there on blankets. And I looked at them very strangely because, if you're playing Frisbee in a field full of people, the whole time you're playing, you're not looking at the Frisbee. You're looking at everybody around you to make sure you don't run into somebody and kill them. Because a lot of times when you're playing Frisbee in a very busy field, you're jumping over people and going around them and doing all these gymnastics to try to keep from hurting anybody. But you have to constantly look in every direction as far as you can see to see if anybody's even beginning to come in your direction, so you can track their movements so you can always know how to avoid them. So I'm watching while I'm playing. I'm not watching the Frisbee. I'm watching everything but the Frisbee. I know once the Frisbee's released, I know exactly where it's going, and I can move in that direction without watching it. So I'm constantly looking at everybody around me to see if anybody's coming in my direction. And the whole time I'm playing, there was nobody coming anywhere near me. There was no people anywhere near me as far as I could see. They were like way off away from us. So those women just got there without walking up. Okay, that's not possible.
Okay.
Then 3 or 4, 6 throws later, they're gone. I'm looking around. As far as I can see, they're not there anymore. Okay, and then 3 or 4 throws later, 6 throws later, whatever, they're back again. They didn't walk up the first time. They didn't walk off the first time. They didn't walk up the second time. And a few throws later, they're gone again. And I'm like, okay, they came twice. They left twice. They never walked up either time. None of that is possible. Okay, there was no way that anybody's going to walk up, sneak up on me and sit down. The way I was watching everything, there's just no way. It was impossible. Okay, and so I knew that those women were not normal humans. And I didn't really snap to the fact that they were aliens at the time. I had to reflect on it later to pick it up. But if you look at the free report, I forgot what these guys are called. They're one of the astronauts was part of that. But they did this study, and they gave people all these questions, and they figured out how many people are abducted, this and that, all these different statistics, and what type of aliens are visiting people. The number one type of alien visiting people is none of the common ones that people talk about. It wasn't the Greys, it wasn't the reptilians, it wasn't anything that anybody talks about. It's what they don't talk about. It's people aliens look exactly like us, humans, and they're aliens, but they look. There's no way to look at them and tell they're aliens. Okay, that's the most common, but nobody ever talks about it, right?
Okay.
So the second most common is creatures that are like energy beings. They look like light, or they're not physical. Okay. Philip K. Dick, the most well-read science fiction author in the entire world, bar none, outside the United States, who many of his books were made into movies, which those movies if you know who he is. Mm-hmm. He was visited by beings of light. Well, the other encounter I'm going to tell you, it wasn't beings of light, but it was not physical, but it was definitely probably an alien. Could have been a demon, but it was probably an alien. But anyway, here's how it goes.
Okay.
I was 18-ish, and I was in Houston, and I was doing a New Age regimen. You were given 2 little bitty crystalline rocks that were supposed to be metaphysically charged with energy, and you put one of them. You taped one of them on your wrist, and you put the other one in a glass, and you filled the glass with water, and you drank the water all week long. So at the end of this week, I was drinking this water with the crystal rock in the bottom of it, the charged crystal rock, and the other one taped to my wrist for the whole week. And this water started tasting really good to me for some reason. And so I'm just like chugging this water like I'm at a frat party and with beer. And I got at some point in that experience, I felt like I was like a Superman sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I felt really strong and powerful and that sort of thing. And I stood up off the couch and I stuck my foot up in the air like I was doing a sidekick above my head, and I started spinning like a ice skater, really, really fast, without setting my foot down. And then when I spun around, I slowed after a few spins really fast. I sat my foot down on the carpet, and my spirit almost came out of my body. I was like very loose in my body. And right at this moment, as I set my foot down, this being came through the wall of my apartment. It was like almost like it came through the door, but I think it was like slightly off from the door. But I couldn't see it. It was invisible, but it made like a cybernetic type of sound, like a robot or a computer or something. I can't even imagine. I can't even recall in my mind exactly how it sounded, but it was a very odd sound. I've never heard anything like it before or after, but it kind of sounded like some kind of computer, but something robotic or something like that. Anyway, cybernetic of some kind. So I could sense intuitively that it was hovering there, and I could hear it, but I couldn't see anything. It was totally invisible. And so, but I knew it was there intuitively also, besides hearing it. And it moved across the room as I was doing what I was doing. And so it ended up in the back corner of the room. But what I did was I moved kind of a little further away from the couch, and I basically laid down really quick because I knew I was going to pass out. I was getting tired really, really quick, like I was passing out in slow motion. And so I got my legs down and my arms down, and I braced myself, and I basically almost dropped my head. I was dropping my head to where I was going to be totally on the carpet. And as my head, or my the rest of my upper body, my head starts going down near the carpet, I close my eyes, and this thing is no longer behind me. It's in front of me to the left side of the couch as I'm facing the couch. And I'm looking at it, even though there's nothing to look at, and I'm listening to it, and my eyes are closed, and my head's still moving towards the carpet. And with my eyes closed, it was like I went into warp speed. On Star Trek, they kick it into warp speed, and you go, the stars go flying past you. Mm-hmm. And so that's what happened in my mind. It was like I was flying through this thing. And that happened for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, no more than 15 seconds max. And then and it stopped. And I opened my eyes, and that was the whole encounter. So it was gone at that point, and it was no longer standing there or hovering there. And don't know what it was, don't know where I went, don't know why I didn't really go anywhere. There's a lot of questions with that one, but that was another one. So those are the two closest ones.
Okay.
Now those are actually the only two close ones. So the other ones were, my first encounter was on October 3rd, 1980. It was a Saturday night. It would take me at least an hour minimum to tell the moment by moment. It would consume the rest of your show, if that's what you want me to do. But that one encounter was very, very long. And I didn't go on board or anything really interesting, but it was still a very long encounter. And if you want, I'll be happy to do it moment by moment, or I can give you the 50,000 1, 2, 5 minute overview, whichever is your preference.
Well, 5 minute overview is fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I just come home from a party. I was sitting in my car. I was considering committing suicide. I was beyond depression. I couldn't move a muscle in my body. It's like I was frozen, not because anybody froze me. I just didn't have any willpower to move. It appeared in my mind, in the middle of my head, as a visual image. The craft did. I didn't know it was a craft at the time. I saw 8 equidistant lights spinning in a circle. It came on from like a quarter of a second or shorter. It was very short visual image in the middle of my head. It was only on long enough for me to see the movement going from left to right, and I saw the movement of the 8 equidistant lights on the edge of a black hole, what looked like a black hole. And so, to make a long story short, eventually I got out of the car, turned around, looked up, and it was there in the sky. And it basically gave me an opportunity to leave with it. It went out over a field, came back, and it took me a while to figure out what it was really wanting me to do. It was wanting me to go with it, and I was ready to go because I was ready to commit suicide. That's why it came. It came because I knew that I was because they knew that I was ready to leave the planet, but in a different way. So that's why they came, because I went out in the night sky saying, come and get me, for like a year, and nothing ever happened. But when I was really ready to go, not thinking about aliens, thinking about leaving in a different way, then they did show up. So anyway, I followed. At some point when it got back in front of me, I said, I realized what it wanted. So together we went out into this field, and it kept going, and it stopped, and it came back, and I said, if you want to take me with you, I'm ready to go. But I don't want to go further out in this field. I want you to land right here. And it said, they're not ready yet. And I said, well, if they're not ready yet, maybe I'm not ready yet. And it left. And when it left in a very slow and odd manner. And that's the whole story, other than the fact that the stars were doing very strange things that night for a period while the craft was there. And anyway, that's the very short version of it. And there's a lot of details I left out.
I understand that. Now I'm going to ask you kind of a weird question here, Mike. When it came to that last encounter, do you believe that was truly an ET, UFO, whatever you want to call it? Or do you believe that might have been some sort of angelic encounter?
Well, I don't think angels use craft, number one. And even the Greys don't need craft. That's one thing I learned from my client who was abducted those 40, 24, 48 times. One thing she said to me was, they don't need craft. They can travel the universe without any spacecraft. The only reason they have this, first of all, I have to preface this with, we're just talking about one gray race. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of gray races, if not hundreds of thousands of gray races. And so we're just talking about one. So this particular gray race that she was referring to, she said they don't need craft. They can travel the universe just as individuals if they want. They have that much power. But the reason why they have the craft is to have a place to tie you down, to have instruments to do the breathing stuff, something to carry their food, and they also keep you in the craft. The women, they keep them in the craft long enough for the egg to attach to the wall, the uterine wall.
But so, follow me here, Mike, on this, and there's a key phrase here, and this is why I say this. If an angel would have flown down with wings and said they're not ready for you yet, would that have been something you would have listened to at that point in your life? Or if something that looks like a craft, an alien craft, comes down and says that to you, would you be more willing to listen to an alien craft than an angel at that point in your life?
Well, there was a lady I knew. I've known more than one person who's encountered angels. Mm-hmm. And there was a girl I knew. I went to San Diego with her and some other folks, and we were learning some metaphysical stuff in a Franciscan monastery in San Diego. And she was like in a crib, like at the age of 3, 5, 4, 5, something like that. I doubt if she was 6. She was probably like 3 to 5, if not maybe 2 or something. I don't know how old she was, but very young. And she had an angel come to her, and she didn't, of course, believe in angels because she was too young to have a clue what angels were. Mm-hmm. But she recalled the story almost like she knew what it was at the time it came. And like I said, she wasn't a Christian. She didn't believe in angels. She was too young to believe in angels. But she did have an angel visit her. It did not have wings. It hovered, and she knew it was an angel. How she knew it was an angel, I have no clue. That it must have been an intuitive, how you just know things. Mm-hmm. It was probably one of those things. But she's not the only one. I've talked to other people who have encountered angels, and they're real, but I don't think they need craft. And just like the Greys don't need craft.
Oh, sure. Well, I guess it's just the phrase, they're not ready for you yet, makes me think that you weren't ready.
No, they're not. It wasn't they're not ready for me yet. It was they're not ready yet, meaning you're not ready yet.
Right.
As in the humans are not ready to see them yet. They didn't want to come with their craft down right next to the houses. I wanted them to come down there so that other humans would see them when we left. And they said, they're not ready yet, as in you're not ready yet to see them. So they were protecting you from their presence.
Okay.
From the seeing of them. So, I have to this day, I have no way of knowing if that craft was physical or not, even at all, because there was no. In all intents and purposes, it was a black hole. It had no surface, no reflection of light.
Mm-hmm.
It blocked out the stars behind it when it passed in front of the stars, but it had no physicality except for the 8 equidistant lights. There was nothing about the craft that would make me think it was physical at all. And there are many people who see craft that are composed of light and nothing but light, but they're craft, but they're not physical. Okay, and that's what this was, except it was dark and not physical. And the odd thing about it was darker than the night sky, and it was pretty dark. The only light in the sky was the stars. There was no moon that night. And so the odd thing is I could see the fact that, it's kind of odd that you could see it at all. The only way I could see it was the fact that the lights were on the edge. If it had turned off those lights, it would be invisible, totally invisible, even though it wasn't trying to be. But when it, at the end, after it left, basically it was this. If I sit my thumb outstretched, it was smaller than my thumb, right?
Okay.
But when I'm looking at it from the side, I could see 3 lights, and then 4 lights, then 3 lights, then 4 lights. It was back and forth depending on what position it was turning. And so most of the time it was there, it was vibrating like a piece on a lathe that's off center. And it should have been leaving a streak of light as it was vibrating, but it didn't. And that's another oddity. And when it was flying, it flew, aircraft, normally human aircraft, change position as the angle of flight. Well, when it was going for me out over the field and came back, remember I said it went out over the field and came back?
Mm-hmm.
During that time, it took like 10 minutes for it to get out in the field and 10 minutes for it to get back. It did a very, very, very slow process of getting out there. And what it did was it flew up at a 45-degree angle, but yet the craft stayed level. It did not change. The craft was always level, but the angle of movement was at a 45-degree angle. It went up a 45-degree angle to a point and then went down at a 45-degree angle and then up and down like a sawtooth. And that sawtooth went all the way across the sky, and you could have drawn a line at the top of all the peaks and at the bottom of all the peaks. They were exactly perfectly the same. It had like total control of its movements, and that just defies all logic. I was on a military base one time, and I was walking across, this was in Uzbekistan, I was walking across this piece of concrete. You would call it a parking lot, but I guess you could call it that if you want. It's in the middle of the desert, but it's just a big piece of concrete like a parking lot. I was walking across the thing, and there was an Apache helicopter hanging where its sponsons that it would sit on the ground with were at my chest level. And the thing was sitting absolutely perfectly stationary. And like rock solid. And I was like, he must be doing this with with a button. He's got a button he pushed where the craft keeps itself level, because there's no human that could do that. And he's sitting there with his rotors revved all the way up and not moving at all. But, this craft had way more control than that thing did. And, it wasn't something that was anything anybody around here developed, and there was no humans inside, I'm sure of it. But I bet there was no Greys in there, too. Because they didn't abduct me. They gave me an opportunity to leave, and I said no, and they respected my wishes. Greys don't do that. They don't respect your wishes, and you don't say no to them. So this was not the Greys. So the Greys are not the only ones coming here. That my encounter proves that point right off the bat. So. Are
they the only aliens in the universe, the Greys, that don't let you have free will, whether you want to go with them or not?
No. The reptilians are the same way, and a lot of the others. But, we tend to whitewash races and groups of races with a broad brush, and it's really, aliens are very complex. There's probably as many alien races as you can see stars in the sky. And so, we talk about the Greys, talk about the reptilians, this and that, and everybody focuses on, half a dozen races. And there's probably hundreds of thousands of races out there, if not millions, and whole races,
So let me ask you this, Mike. The human or humanoid, I'll just say human, the human-looking aliens that you've seen, and Dave's always had this theory, and I kind of subscribe to it too. The human-looking aliens that you've seen, are these just us that have traveled back through time or traveled forward through time, or are they time travelers that we're seeing that have come back to this time to maybe sneak a glimpse at us and our history?
No, I don't subscribe to that. The humans in the future do learn time travel. That's a given. But what I saw, I don't think was us. I think that was just a race that looks like us. And I think there are races that can walk amongst us, and I think there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of races that can walk amongst us, and you would never know the difference. And some of them are more physical than others. And I don't know that that race that I encountered was physical at all. But I had my own astral encounter. It's kind of an odd encounter. Like I said about the girl who was abducted by, had the 72 encounters and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Like she had the encounters with the astral demons.
Yep.
Okay. Those are astral beings from the astral plane coming to the earth, right? Well, I had a similar encounter. It wasn't with something like that, but it was similar in the sense that it's the same concept. Okay. So, what I did was I was walking with my wife in Mason Neck Park, which is up in Virginia. And so as I'm walking, I start feeling a pain a very sharp pain at the base of my pointing finger on my left hand, and on the actual finger itself, not the hand, at the very bottom of the finger, and a very sharp pain. And without thinking, I reach over with my left hand and I squeeze the air above my finger. And, I don't even know why I did it, but I didn't use any thought. I didn't think, well, what should I do? I just did it, right? I squeezed the air just above my finger, and what looked like blood spurted to the right of that space, like I was squashing something that had red blood in it. And that blood was visible for 1 second, 2 seconds. Doubt if it was more than 3 seconds, and then it disappeared. And so, or actually, maybe it was second. It was there for a second, full second, 2 seconds, something like that, just long enough for me to see it happen. It never actually landed on my finger. It was not there long enough to do that. And so something had bitten me that was invisible, and and my hand swelled up like a balloon. And I went to the doctor. There was I came home, I looked on the internet or through the Yellow Pages or something. I don't remember how I found the doctor. But I found a clinic that was open 7 days a week. And it was an Iranian doctor. I still have a receipt from going to the guy. And he examined my hand, and I told him my experience, and he said, yeah, I can see 2 puncture wounds in your finger. And it was swollen up really big. And so I have like proof from another human and the medical exam that something which did not have persistence on this plane bit me. And I have a feeling that that bug was from the astral plane. Now, when I told this to Joe Montaldo, he's like thinking this was a gray, the Greys did something to me that made me have this experience. I wasn't really walking through Mason Neck Park, and it was just an experience on a gray craft sort of thing. And I'm like, no, I was in Mason Neck Park. I'm sure of it. But anyway.
But if you're having a lucid experience, and how would you know? You know?
You mean, well, okay, so when I was in that jail, or in the facility, it wasn't a jail. When I was in the facility, after I was taken to jail and I was mind screwed, I should say it more properly.
Okay.
I was mind screwed for 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
There were things I went through in that jail cell which were very real to me in my head, but they weren't real. How do I put this? They were fake, and I knew they were fake.
Explain to us a little bit about what you went through, just to give our audience an idea.
Well, okay, so I was in jail for it was some discord between me and my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And they put me in jail, and I was in a normal jail cell. I was processed from the lockup that when you're first in the first area you're processed into. I was processed from there into the regular jail, and after 6 or 8 hours or whatever, in the middle of the night, I'm in the regular jail, in a regular cell, and they came in and got me out of the police came in and got me out of the cell and took me out of the building and put me in a police car in the middle of the night for no reason, and took me somewhere. Now, for all I know, they drove around the building 5 times and back in the same building, and we went 50 floors down. I have no idea where they took me, because it was pitch dark at night, and there's not lights out in that area. I have no idea where they took me, but where I ended up was in a facility that looked like a jail, but it was not a jail, in the sense that it was a jail, in the sense that it was a facility that appeared internally as if it were a jail. There's a TV show called 60 Days In. You familiar with that one? I
am not. No.
Okay, well, they put people in jail. The sheriff of that area puts people in the jail to infiltrate the jail to find out who's doing illegal stuff in the jail. So it's a fake show. It's a real show in a real jail, but the people participating are real, but they're pretending to be regular inmates, but they're not regular inmates. They're working for the cops, right?
Okay. Yep.
For the sheriff.
Yep.
Okay. So, but if you saw that show, you would know what the inside of a jail facility looks like. It's normal. There's all kinds of different jail facilities, but in that particular one, it's got a common area, and you got all these tables, and you've got 2 stories, and you've got a walkway around the upper story, and you got a common area that's out in the middle, and then you've got rooms all around the whole thing that are big enough to hold plenty of people in each of the rooms, and 5 or 6 or whatever. Anyway, it looked like that, but there were differences. The facility I was put into was brand new, like it had been built the day before, and it could have been built the day before, for all I know. You could have eaten off the floor. It was spotless, not a scratch anywhere on it. It looked like, brand spanking new, like they washed every inch of it to perfection. And it was absolutely brand new, absolutely spotless, and absolutely devoid of people, except there were inmates, but they were just pretending to be inmates. Okay, there was maybe, I'd say less than half a dozen people pretending to be inmates in the whole place. 5 or 6, right? This is a big facility. They could have held that in one little bitty cell. They could have held that many people. But that's the total number of people in the whole place. There's me and like 5 or 6 other people, max. And I was only seeing 1 or 2 of them at a time. And I'm just presuming there was 5 or 6. There could have been less than that. Okay? So there were no Hispanics, no light-skinned blacks, no women, of course, no whites. It was me and dark-skinned blacks and nobody else. And it was like I was in Africa, okay? When I say dark, I mean very dark.
Okay.
And there were no light-skinned blacks, no medium-skinned blacks, no Hispanics, no whites, and just like 4, 5, 6 very dark-skinned black people. And that's it. And this facility could have held hundreds of people, but it was like 5 or 6 people. They're pretending to be inmates. They're not real inmates. And the reason why I knew that was at some point I'm standing out in the common area. I was only allowed out of my cell for like 1 hour out of 5 days. 1 single hour, not 1 hour a day, 1 hour period. Okay? And they wanted me to play basketball, and I was like, no, that's not going to happen. But anyway, so I'm standing out in the common area for the only hour in a 5-day period which I was out of that cell. And there was a guard standing there 20 foot, 30 foot from me, and there was an inmate in one of the cells. So directly in front of me, he pushes open his door. He walks out into the common area like it was never locked, right? He looks at the guard. He says, same time tomorrow? And the guard looks at him and said, yes, same time tomorrow. He walks off and out of the facility, completely out of it. Okay? And they didn't care that I knew that it was all fake. Okay? That's one example. Okay? So inside my cell, you had my cell was not one of the cells you would have seen on this show. This was a very high-tech piece of construct. I'm sure that one day we will see these things, but I don't know that any of these things have ever been shown publicly. But they're like a very high-tech little container thing. It's kind of hard to describe, but it is made of 2 pieces. It has rivets, so it's human constructed, but it's only like 2 pieces of metal for the whole thing. It's a full enclosure with 2 pieces of metal riveted together, right? You have a metal lavatory that's part of the full construct. You have the part where you sit on your bunk was wide, and then the front part by the door was thinner, but it was like I don't know what kind of shape I would describe it. It was almost like a, what's the guy with the triangle shaped globes? What was the guy's name? You know what I'm talking about? They're made out of triangles.
Kind of, yeah. I get what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, well, it was almost like that. It wasn't that shape. It was less surfaces than that, but it was really an odd shape. I can't even remember exactly what shape it was, to be honest. It's been too long ago. But it was a very odd shape. It wasn't a square. It wasn't a rectangle. It wasn't a ball or a globe. It was just an odd shape that was not uniform in any thing. But anyway, okay, so I'm sitting in this thing, and above the door, inside of it, you had, in my particular cell, someone had scratched like half a dozen symbols. There was a star, a square, a circle. I don't remember all the symbols, but there was like 5 or 6 symbols that were scratched really big above the door, to where it was covering all the way from end to end, just above the width of the door above the door. It's a regular sized door, right? And so they would move me from one of these pods to another one while I was asleep. And I don't know how they did it, because I would have woken up, but they did it. And I don't know if I was drugged or what, gassed. I have no idea. But I'd get moved from one of these pods to another while I'm sleeping, and because they never did it when I was awake. But I would wake up, and one day I'd have the door in front of me with those scratch marks on it. The next day I would have the same thing, except there would be a door on the side. There would be 2 doors. And it went back and forth between 1 door and 2 doors. And I was like, none of this made any sense, because you can't just have 1 door one day and 2 doors the next day. I had to have been moved from one pod, I call it a pod, to another one. And these pods were out in the middle of the common, where if you walked out of any of the cells on the walls and out in the commons, the pod was out in the common. Okay, it wasn't built into the side like the normal cells. It was a separate construct out in the middle of the common area. And there was a whole bunch of those. And so this facility looked like it was made to be able to move it around and deconstruct it and put it back together really quick. And what happened was all kinds of bizarre stuff that if I start talking about it, the first thing you're going to think is this guy's off his rocker. And that's the whole point of doing mind control. The first purpose in doing mind control is not to take control of your mind. It's to drive you insane. That's the first purpose of mind control. The second purpose of mind control is to make you sound crazy, because if you talk about it, everything else you say is null and void. People start writing you off as a kook right off the bat. So I have a hard time talking about some of the things that happen in that experience, 5-day experience, because if I start getting really into it too deep, you're going to immediately think this guy's nuts. Okay, that's the second purpose of mind control. First, to drive you insane. And if they don't drive you insane, to make you sound insane. Because if you start talking about it, it totally invalidates everything else you say about anything. And that's part of the purpose, is you're either insane, you're looked at as insane, or you're invalidated about all the other things you talk about, aliens or paranormal, whatever you might be discussing they don't want discussed by you. You start getting into that area, it's so bizarre and crazy, people are like, no, this guy's nuts.
Well, how do you keep your credibility in the face of all that, then?
It's really not easy. I am very careful about it. See, here's what happened. My wife told them I was high at the time we had this. See, what happened was my wife became fully possessed. Okay, and so I basically confined her to a space, and because I did that, I ended up in jail, and almost ended up in prison for 2 years because of it. But if I had not done that, if I had not confined my wife to a space while she was possessed, she probably would have not be alive today. I don't think she'd be alive because she was not in control of her body, and that's another story. But that's why I ended up in jail, and that story alone is pretty bizarre. If you want me to go through it, I'll be happy to. But
Yeah, I mean, why don't we close on that story, because that's pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting story.
Okay, so I was sitting in my rocker recliner. At that time, we only had a one-bedroom apartment, and she was sitting on the couch drinking wine. She likes to drink wine, and I'm not an alcoholic like she is. So she drinks out of this mug. She still has the mug today. It's a huge mug, red mug with a black rim on the top of it. And she fills it full of wine and ice. And unlike most people, she doesn't just drink the wine. It's watered down with a lot of ice. Mm-hmm. So she's sitting there. She picks up, the first thing I notice, I'm working on the computer. The TV's on in the background. She's watching TV on the couch. I'm in the rocker recliner working on my computer. And she picks up the glass. She takes a drink out of it. She sits the glass down. She picks it up, takes a drink out of it, sits the glass down. And when she sits it down, she leaves it down for maybe a second or 2 seconds at most, and then picks it up and takes another drink. And she's just doing this over and over and over. She's never done that before or since. Okay, that's the first thing I noticed. Second thing I noticed is her eyes turn black. When I say black, I mean all of the eye, not the iris.
Right.
Her eyes go totally black, and then they go totally red, and then they roll up into the top of her head and go totally white. So it's black, red, white, black, red, white, and it's like, or it could have been red, black, white, I don't remember, but it was one color, which was black or red, and then the other color, black and red, and then white. And it kept doing that over and over. And at some point, she stands up and she turns to the right, and she goes to take a step. And to this day, I don't remember whether she took a step or not. But if she did, that was the only step she took, because she didn't move. She was totally frozen, standing there. She turned to the right, and like I said, I don't remember if she stepped or not, but she didn't go very far, and she was frozen as if she'd been shot by a freeze ray, and I just sat there watching her and watching, and she never did move. She was like, never, I don't know if I left her there for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Hell, it could have been an hour. It was a long time she was standing there. And I don't remember how long it was, but I just kept waiting and waiting and waiting for her to move and do something. But I knew she wasn't in control of her body. So she never moved. So at some point, I stood up and walked over, and I grabbed her wrist. I walked her into the bedroom, threw her on the bed, and I stood beside the bed holding her wrists. And she was freaking out. She thought I was trying to kill her. I'm Chuck Norris's best friend, trained me privately for a year and a half and publicly for 2 years. And he was trained privately by Chuck Norris for 6.5 years, one-on-one. And so you might say it would take me less than a quarter of a second to kill her if I really wanted to kill her. She'd be dead now. She's not. She's in the bed sleeping in the other room. So obviously I wasn't trying to kill her. So I'm standing over her, holding her wrist on the side of the bed. She's freaking out, thinking I'm trying to kill her, and I can't control her by standing there beside the bed. So I get up on the bed, and I sit on her waist, facing her. And she's bucking me I'm like riding a bucking bronco. Mm-hmm. And all I'm doing is holding on to her wrist just hard enough to keep her from getting loose. And at some point, 1 or 2 times, she calms down. So I let go of her arms, and she tries to take my head off. She hits me as hard as she can. She hit me literally like not even a full millimeter away from my eye. She almost took my eye out. And so I had to grab her wrists again, because it just wasn't safe for me to have her loose from my grip. So she's screaming at the top of her lungs for like 2 hours. And so there was at some point within that 2-hour period, her eyes roll up into the top of her head, and she falls back to a prone position like she's just died. And I looked at her chest. There was no movement. I looked at her stomach. There was no movement. Her body was as stiff as a board. There was absolutely no movement whatsoever. She was totally frozen still. Her eyes were rolled up into the top of her head, white. And I thought she was dead. Honestly, I really did think she was dead. And I always skip this one point. Okay, so there was a point where I got really bored with listening to her scream so loud, and so I put my hand over her mouth, and I didn't press down, and I was very careful not to cover her air passages on her nose. But there was a space between my fingers on my left hand on the top of her mouth, and I could see a cut. I couldn't see the cut. I could see the blood coming from the cut. A cut formed about maybe half an inch across her upper lip. My hand wasn't pressing down. I wasn't even pushing down on her mouth. I was barely touching her. I'm surprised she didn't bite me. And I was barely touching her skin. I wasn't moving. I wasn't hitting her, striking her, even moving my hand. But this cut started forming under my finger, and I could see the blood spatter coming off of the cut. And when I lifted my hand, there was this cut bleeding on her lip, her upper lip. And there was nothing hitting her or scraping her, nothing. There was no movement on that part of her mouth above her mouth. There was no movement of my hand at that moment, and I wasn't pressing down. This cut just came out of nowhere and was bleeding profusely. And because she was moving her arms around so wildly, welts, bruises were formed all up and down her arms because she was straining against my holding her. And she was straining so hard that these bruises appeared up and down her arms like I was hitting her, but I wasn't. I never struck her at all. And so at the end of it, I thought she had died. She was like laying there, no movement of her body whatsoever, no breathing, nothing. And people ask me, did you check the pulse? I don't know how to check the pulse. I can kill somebody, but I can't tell if they're dead after they're dead. So anyway, when she looked dead, her eyes were rolled up in the top of her head. She's not breathing. I get off of her because I think she's dead, right? I get off of her, and I move down to the bottom of the bed. I'm below her. I'm not touching her, and I'm just sitting there looking at her, wondering or assuming she's dead. And I'm like not very happy, and I'm like, I wish she wasn't dead. And after like maybe 30 seconds or a minute, her eyes roll down out of the top of her head. She sits up. She looks at me really startled. She's like freaked out at the fact that I'm not touching her. She jumps off the bed, runs out of the room, runs out of the apartment, runs downstairs, and runs to a neighbor's. And the neighbors, without her telling them to, call the police. And that's how I end up in the jail getting mind screwed for 5 days. And so anyway, so I have an attaching spirit sitting on my head, and I have one that sits on my back. They're both demonic, and I've had them since I was 16 or 18 years of age. I got them from smoking marijuana, and if anybody ever tells you that marijuana is nothing wrong with it, tell them come see me. I'll talk to them.
So, wait a minute. So,
caught you there, didn't I?
Yeah, a little bit. You got to rewind a little bit here, Mike. So, in short form, why is it that marijuana? Is it just marijuana in particular? Is it now? You said your wife was drinking wine. She had a demon.
I got mine from smoking marijuana. She got hers from playing with a Ouija board.
Okay.
At the age of 14, on her 14th birthday, a neighbor came over with a Ouija board, and they were playing with it as a fun birthday thing to do. That's how she got, just like the kid, The Exorcist, it's based very, very, very loosely based on a true story, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was a little boy, and I've heard different cities. I've heard the Maryland suburb of D.C., and I've heard other cities, but that he was supposed to have been in. But he got his from playing with a Ouija board with his aunt, and was never told about being possessed. She got hers the same way, and but it's her story about how she got hers is actually a little longer than that. The Ouija board was part of it, and then there's more to that story, a lot more to that story.
So these two demons are still with you, is what you're saying?
Yeah, they are. I've had them all my life.
How or why have you not gotten rid of them?
Because I have a dream. It's a very important dream. It's a plan. You call it a plan or a dream, either one. But here's how it works. I'm in a crowd, a theater or a large room, and I'm sitting in my chair facing the crowd. The crowd is facing me. On the left side of the room or the right side or both, you have a line of people. They're snaking around from the crowd to me, and they're stopping a little ways from me, and there's a guy standing at the front of this line. He's got a watch. He lets the guy at the head of the line go past the end of the line to get behind me. The guy who goes beyond the line walks up behind me. He sticks out his arm to the left side of my head. I look up, see his arm. I reach up, I grab his arm. He closes his eyes. He relaxes his arm. I move his arm, if it's relaxed properly, to where his hand is placed on my head in the exact spot where my attaching spirit sits. I've done this with my wife, and she could feel it. She could feel its vibration. She said it was the strangest thing she'd ever felt. Of course, I doubt that's correct. She's experienced some pretty strange stuff. But anyway, if she can feel it, other people can feel it. Oh, yeah. When we're doing this, the people react to feeling the vibrations of my attaching spirit that sits on my head, that one. I have one on my back also. And they react to that facially because they're going to feel it. And this is all video recorded, put on YouTube. And at some point, people start realizing that attaching spirits are real and that demons are real. And then we go to the next phase. The next phase is we have a contest, and that is either crowdfunded or it's angel-funded. You know what an angel is. Mm-hmm. And we come up with this contest to take the technology of cameras to another level. Are you familiar with the fact that a zero-lux camera can see spirits in real time? Did you understand that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so the week after the zero-lux camera came out, I was in Skycomish, Washington, on a ghost hunting trip, and I was standing behind a girl who had a zero-lux camera that came out within that week. She was one of the first people to buy one. And this orb flew over us. I couldn't see it because I'm not that psychic. The women I was with were that psychic. They could see them. But it came down in front of us and got in front of her camera, and I could see it in real time. It started flying in a figure-8 formation. And if you ever get the full version of my first encounter, you'll see how that plays out with the aliens too. That figure-8 thing comes into that story too. But anyway, it's just showing off that it's not a bug. Bugs don't fly in figure-8 formation. Mm. So anyway, so if a zero-lux camera can see spirits in real time, then you should be able to develop visual technology to see attaching spirits, because they're spirits just like a ghost is a spirit, an orb is a spirit. They're all spirits, right? So there should be a way to develop a camera technology that can see spirits attached, just like They can see spirits that are not attached. Okay, so that once somebody develops that, they get the 1 million or the 10 million or whatever, however much we get somebody to put into the kitty. Once that is developed, the third phase is you do the same thing again, have another contest with lots of money in it, 1 million, 10 million, whatever it takes. And the next contest is who can come up with a technique to remove attaching spirits. Now, when I say a technique to remove attaching spirits, I mean the way the contest would work, you pick a dozen people or 24 people randomly, and whoever thinks they have the technique, they teach it to these people, and if they can reliably, Joe Blow off the street can remove attaching spirits without spending more than an hour or two learning the technique. If each one of those people, every one of those people can do that successfully, then they get the $10 million or 1 million or 5 million or whatever, however much it is. So at that point, the world realizes that attaching spirits are real. They can be seen with a camera in real time after it's developed, and then they can be removed reliably. At that point, we remove all the attaching spirits from every person on the planet, and this planet changes, and there's no more war, there's no more crime, there's no more terrorism. That all goes away. We have a utopia. We're done. That's my dream.
Okay.
So I thought it was a noble dream, but
yeah. Okay. Well,
so where do you want to go now that we have time for? There's all kinds of areas that we've touched that we can go back to. If there's
we've already gone pretty long as far as the show goes, but I think that's pretty good for right now. Okay. Doesn't mean we can't always have a return visit.
Sure.
But yeah, it just that intrigues me. That well, you know what? Let's leave it on this note, and because I've again the whole demonic thing.
We'll have to get into that area. Yeah, the
demonic thing. I guess I still have a question or two. You know, you had said something earlier about aliens being able to stop demons, but yet it seems like demons have such easy entry into.
I got mine from smoking pot. The story of how I learned that I got it from smoking pot, that's actually an interesting story. But,
we'll tell it real quick before we leave today.
I was living in Portland, Oregon with my wife, and somehow I came across a lady who thought she had some healing powers. She did not. But we went from Portland down to Southern Oregon, went to their out in the middle of nowhere, double wide mobile home, and walked into this mobile home. This lady and her husband are sitting there, and she points her finger at me and says, "You're healed." And I'm like, "You fool." That's what I'm thinking, you know? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, she doesn't have any powers. I knew instantly she did not. But we played out the day. We were nice to these people, and we left. And she called me weeks later. I don't remember how many weeks it was later, 3 or 4 weeks. It really not important for the story. But she called me 2 or 3, 6 weeks later and said, "I talked to my psychic friend, and she's told me that you got your problem from smoking, but I didn't see you smoke. Do you smoke?" You know, the word pot didn't come in this conversation, right? And I said, "Well, I've never smoked cigarettes, and yes, I did, past tense, smoke pot. I'd kicked my addiction the year before I met my wife, but, past tense, yes, I stayed high morning, noon, and night for 18 years, from the age of 16 to the age of 30. 16 plus 18 is what? 34. To the age of 34, I was high from the age of 16 to the age of 34 all day and night. And so that's how I got my she told me, I told her that. And but her psychic friend, who was never paid a dime, And I never met her psychic friend, told her that that's how I got it, from smoking. She never told her what smoking what. And so she thought it was cigarettes. She assumed it was cigarettes, but no, it was not cigarettes. But the psychic was correct. That's how I got it. So both of them. But the one on my head, is always there. I can always feel it. The one on my back is almost never there. It shows up here and there. It comes and goes. But the one on my head is always there. So anyway, I guess that's a good note to end, or a note. I don't know if that's a good note, but it's a note to end on. But there's a lot of stuff to talk about. That I can go through my first encounter moment by moment. That's an hour. That's a whole show. I mean, just that one encounter would take probably most of your show to tell that. And my second encounter is interesting because it was on NASA base before the first space shuttle launch. And they showed up. I thought they were going to show up to see the launch, but they didn't. They showed up to help me retain my sanity. Because after I had my first close encounter, my mind was going back and forth between, you saw it, no, you're going crazy, no, you saw it, no, you're going crazy. It was literally battling back and forth about, I was still in denial because I know I saw it, but yet those things don't exist, right? So I was like coming down on both sides, arguing that both sides back and forth in my head for 6 months until my second encounter on the base before the first space shuttle launch. By the way, I have the best photo ever taken of any space shuttle launch ever by anybody.
Really?
Yeah. It won the Houston Chronicle Kodak contest. I would have won $5,000 had they not disqualified me. And I was disqualified, but it's the best photo ever taken. It'll be on the cover of my book when it comes out.
Very cool. Do you have a release date on the book yet, or is it just an ongoing work right now?
No, the book is finished, but I don't know if it'll ever be published. It may sit. I may take it to my grave for all I know.
Oh,
I don't plan on self-publishing it. If I don't get an agent, then it'll never be published. So
okay.
When I get an agent, I'm looking for an agent, but I'm not looking for. I was if you'd asked me 6 months ago or even 3 months ago, I'd say I'm looking for a literary agent, but I'm not. I'm looking for an agent, period, because I think that it's very likely that I'll end up making a movie before I make the book, before I publish the book, because I think a movie could be made that's, that would make a lot of money, that wouldn't be terribly expensive to make, that just take all the paranormal and the alien stuff, put it together, and the mind screwing stuff in real time, like you're there, in first person. It would scare the what out of people. I think people would walk out of the theater like with their head spinning.
Okay.
And but anyway,
people can check you out where, Mike?
ProfoundStates.com.
All right, Mike. Thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
All right, go check out the site. There's things on my site that aren't anywhere else, and so it's worth seeing.
All right, Mike Beaver has been our guest. ProfoundStates.com is the website. Be sure to check him out. In the meantime, be sure to check out True Crime Tuesday coming up on Tuesday. Again, I'll be hosting the show on Tuesday, and we'll lots of good stuff coming up on Tuesday as well. To subscribe to True Crime Tuesday, just go to darknessradio.com. Click on the banner with Scully with the fedora and the trench coat. And again, it's just $5 a month. It's on Patreon. And you got a whole 2 years worth of archives over there that you also get when you subscribe for your $5 a month. It's a brand new show every Tuesday for you over there on Patreon. For Dave Schrader, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you very much for joining us this Sunday for another edition of the best in paranormal talk radio. This has been Beyond the Darkness.